Well, friends, are you ready to defeat capitalism? I mean, survive capitalism? We got to do one of those things. I don't know. All right. Uh, I guess this is the panel on surviving capitalism as a crafter or an artist or some other small fine arts person that maybe you're at the artist alley, maybe you're at the dealer's room. That's sort of what this is for. Out of curiosity, where are my communist stickers? Says the chat. I don't have any stickers because I am not a designer. Somebody help me make stickers. All right, so out of curiosity, based on just this title, drop in the chat what you think this panel is about and or what you're hoping to learn, and maybe I'll talk about some of that stuff. We'll see. Also, there may or may not be some swears depending on how worked up I get during this conversation. Okay, so just a little bit about me. Why am I talking about this? I've had multiple handmade businesses. Some of them have even worked. And by worked, I mean didn't lose money, which is basically the bar. So I made fleece hats in college. I started off making kitty caps. It later developed into spunky kitty style. I sold at Anime North. I sold at the clothing show. I sold at Fan Expo, whatever it's called now. And that was 1,000 years ago. And I managed to do that. And I graduated college without any debt, which is rock on. That's, the dream, I guess. Now, university was much more expensive and that did not work the same way. It only worked with college. And I continued to grow that business after university. I ended up getting a local seamstress to do piecemeal work. So I guess you could say it was pretty successful. I also think it was easier in those days. This was before Etsy even existed. I had to look it up. Etsy was launched in 2005. So at the time, the main online marketplace was like eBay, and that was still mostly buying and selling goods from like people's grandma's garage. So it wasn't really a place for business. And when it was, it definitely wasn't the place for like handmade goods, and especially not geeky handmade goods. I ended up closing the hat business after about, I think, 6 or 7 years, because at the time I really loved my day job. Somehow, I don't know how that worked out, but pretend it was a thing. I also got really into soap making later on in the 20-teens, and I managed to launch Good Williams, my soap company, right as the pandemic was starting. And literally every other person on earth was starting a craft business. Perfect timing, not really recommended, but fun as heck. And I had a bit of a different experience of the pandemic than a lot of people. I worked in quality assurance at a cannabis grow facility, which, side note, is not nearly as fun as it sounds. It's not the cool kind of quality assurance. It was like writing SOPs and talking to the government. But since we were an essential service, I had to continue working all the time and was crazy burnt out, and nobody knew what the fuck was going on at that time. I am also probably older than you, as I have referenced 2005 being when I was finished college and university. So yeah.
You're not old. Stop that.
I am very proud of my age. I'm great. I'm not saying old is bad. I'm just saying I'm probably older than a bunch of the people in this chat. Yeah, yay old. Thank you, Ziki. All right. So if we're going to survive under capitalism, we should probably define what capitalism is. Because it is not just the buying and selling of goods. That happens in a whole bunch of different economic systems. So
thank you so much, Michael, for your donation. Interrupting you. Sorry. Bye.
No worries. Yay, donation. Thank you, capitalism. All right, so capitalism is an economic system in which private individuals or businesses own capital goods. And capital goods are the physical assets used in the production to manufacture goods or services for consumers. So things that are not the end product, things that won't be used up by the consumer, but just things used to facilitate the production. So the store, the factory, the cash register, the truck. But also, in addition to just private individuals owning these things, at the same time, the business owners employ workers, that's usually us, who receive only wages. And so by which they mean they go to work, they do the job, they get paid money, but they don't own the means of production. They don't usually get a share of the profits. They just, here's your paycheck, thank you. Yeah, so they just use them. Capitalism is dependent on the enforcement of private property rights, which provide incentives for investment in and the productive use of capital. We're not going to get into that part. That is a long other rant, not directly within this. We're trying to survive capitalism. We're not just trying to learn the whole history. But it did develop out of feudalism and mercantilism, and did dramatically expand industrialization and the large-scale availability of mass market consumer goods. So, yay, I guess. Now, as I sort of said before, capitalism is not to be confused with commerce. Commerce is the act of buying and selling goods and services, and most economic systems involve the trade of money for goods and services. $20 can buy many peanuts. So basically, capitalism sets up the rules of the game, and commerce is one of the ways it's played. If you want a fun metaphor, capitalism is the design of the theme park. So it sets up the rules and the structures and the pricing, but commerce is visitors actually showing up and buying tickets and going on the rides. So capitalism is the framework, and commerce is the day-to-day act of buying and selling that happens within capitalism, because that's where we live. We all live in capitalism. So some of the main things that people come across when deciding to start a craft business, or they make crafts enough so that everyone's saying, oh, you should sell this, you should join Artist Alley, you've been working really hard, you should sell your products for money. And that leads to a whole bunch of questions that people usually ask. But what should I do? How can I charge money for something that I love doing? Are my products even worth it? Would people pay money for this? How can I price things so that everyone can afford them? Or people complain that my prices are too high? That sort of thing. There's all these arguments. Just sort of, people are confused. People don't know how to price things properly in a way that benefits them and doesn't completely gouge the consumer. So we'll touch on some of these in this talk. And I'm talking too fast. Sorry about that, but that's what we get. So one of the things we do need to talk about within this system of capitalism and selling for your craft goods, profit is a thing that exists. There's some ways to deal with it, but we'll get into that. So by definition, profit describes the financial benefit realized when revenue generated from a business activity exceeds the expenses, costs, and taxes involved in sustaining that activity. Also known as the money left over, usually. So how does this fit in with handmade? Because handmade is supposed to be about authenticity. It's supposed to be about care. And a lot of times we feel under capitalism, our art, our products have been reduced to a price tag and a profit margin. And so what do you do about this? This is just sort of, again, we live under capitalism. Someday we can beat it, but that day is not today. And if you got to price your stuff to go to the Artist Alley tomorrow, we have to work within it. We'll work on that. So what can you do about this? One of the things you need to do first is you should pay yourself a living wage. You are pouring your heart and soul into this. You are pouring your creativity into this and spending countless hours into, if not every single piece you make, at least into your products as a whole. Like, this isn't, your labor isn't just a cost involved in this. This is an expression of your skill and passion. So, sorry about that. So you do need to charge what you're worth, because you need to not only support yourself, but you also sort of need to challenge the notion of our capitalistic lower prices at all cost system by because it is pretty much long ignored the true value of creative work. So, oh, thank you for the comment. Adorable slides. Yes, I specifically chose the least corporate slides that I could find, and I love them. There are little strawberries and flowers, and it's honestly love it. But yeah, so you should pay yourself what you are worth, especially within a system that a lot of times ignores the value of creative work. It wants creatives to work for peanuts. It wants products for free and super cheap. And that goes for other people too. If you somehow get to a point where you are hiring someone else to help you in your little craft business or your big craft business, you need to pay them a living wage too. Every single person contributing to your craft deserves fair compensation. Kind of end of sentence. Like that's just how it should go. By ensuring that your team is also paid what they are worth, and they are worth more than minimum wage. We'll get to that later. By paying them what they're worth, you really are helping build a more ethical and respectful and sustainable work environment. So ideally, even within this system, we want to be lifting everyone up and not just squeezing all the profits you can out of the back of the business. Kind of sounds like a fart. I realized as I wrote that. You can also consider other benefits of payment for employees. Instead of sticking with traditional pay structures, you can explore options like profit sharing, co-ownership, flat salary levels, as these models can distribute the rewards of the business more equitably. But we're not going to super get into detail there in terms of like business structure, because for the purposes of this, I'm kind of assuming it's just you, at least just for now. You're a sole proprietor, and but you do have to price things as if you might have an employee, because if you did someday, that has to already be built in. You can't just suddenly jack up all your prices because you need to hire help. I mean, you can, but it won't really work. One of the things you can also do with some of your products is offer a more affordable item, a more affordable option that is subsidized by your other products. So depending on what you sell, and we'll get to the pricing formulas later, but your pricing may end up what feels high, or not everyone can afford to pay a premium price. And honestly, that's okay. Like, well, it's not okay. Everyone should be able to afford shit, right? But your labor deserves to be compensated, and the employee's labor deserves to be compensated, and that has to be built into your pricing. And perhaps not everyone can afford that pricing because their wages have been suppressed for multiple decades at this point, and we need to work on that. But by offering a range of pricing within your business, it does allow more people to have access to your art without compromising your commitment to fair wages and quality. So, but however, the cheaper an item is, the more you need to subsidize it with your other work. So you need to take that into account with your pricing formula. So, for example, your higher priced items will have a small amount built in to subsidize your cheaper products so that they are more available to everyone. So some examples like this might be stickers. Like I said, I'm not a designer. I don't have any stickers, but I would love some stickers. If you're an artist selling big prints, your print might be $40, $80. I have no idea what prints cost these days. But a sticker could be like, $1 or $2. You still have to, cover your costs, but $1 or $2 is very affordable. And if someone loves your art as a big picture on the wall, they'll still love a fun little sticker to put on where do kids put their stickers these days? The back of their phone, their laptop, mom's iPad, the wall. The wall sounds good. So, what else besides stickers? So for non-artists, like non-visual graphic art artists, it can sometimes be a little harder. For example, for my own stuff, I made soap. You can't really make soap into a sticker, or can you? You could, if you're not an artist, commission an artist to make a cute drawing of one of your soaps. That could be a sticker. Or you could make little slogans like, I'll see you in the shower later. That's a sticker. I'd pay $2 for that. Come on. For example, a cosplayer, if your work is more art that you wear or commission type stuff, you could do like postcard size photographs of yourself in your poses, in your costumes, things like that. Those are just some quick options. If you really want to offer a sorry. I work from home. I don't talk much. I need to drink a lot of water. If you really want to level the playing field, you can go beyond a subsidized item and you can offer something free, literally free. The easiest way to do this, both easiest for you and easiest for the customer, offer some sort of free digital download like a phone wallpaper. Everyone has a phone. People like wallpapers, and especially these days with most phones, you can change up your wallpaper, anytime. Great. But yeah, so offer like your sticker art, your print art, photographs. It could be a phone wallpaper, and boom, now everybody can afford it. So you need to pay yourself and your team a fair living wage, and you can look into other options for payment within your own company if you get that big. Because the goal is, again, to survive within the capitalist system, but not just survive it, you're challenging it a little bit. It's not a form of direct action, but you are proving that authenticity and care can be a foundation for a sustainable and ethical business. And honestly, that's way more fun. Yes, it looks like people do want some I'll see you in the shower later stickers. Somebody work on that. Free idea.
Do it, Caitlin. Do it, Caitlin.
Yeah, so for the purposes of our discussion, we will be including profit in our calculations because for all the reasons I just said, it's kind of needed to do those things to pay yourself a living wage, pay any employees a living wage, and you can reinvest profits back into the business. You don't have to just be a dragon sitting on your hoard of gold. They can do other good, or you can literally donate them to charities that do good work that you like if it squeaks you out a little bit to have profit. But as you'll see in our pricing calculation, we can have profit and it is separate from the wages that you get paid for your work. So you can do both. Sort of side note on living wage. Living wage is not the same as minimum wage. A living wage is the income needed to cover essential expenses like housing, food, healthcare, transportation, without falling down into poverty. Now, this is a little screenshot that I stole from Ontario living wage. I'm here in Alberta, hello, but I figured a lot of people would probably be in Ontario. So you can just sort of see that different areas within the province have a different livable wage based on what it actually costs to live there. So you can sort of see that living in London down at $19.50 might cover all your expenses. Up in Bruce County, it's a little bit more expensive to get some things, at $23.05. If you head to Toronto, you're at $26. And so you can see it covers a wide range, but also that feels a little low, doesn't it? We'll get into that. So unlike the minimum wage, living wage is based on local costs, and the idea is to ensure a decent standard of living with a little extra for unforeseen needs. So according to Ontario living wage.ca, living wage includes food, clothing, shelter, childcare, transportation, medical expenses, some recreation, and a modest vacation. It includes a vacation. When was the last time any of you had a vacation? But it does not include things like retirement savings, debt repayment, home ownership, saving for your children's education, or really anything beyond like a small cushion for emergencies or hard times. So those are sort of extra. I guess you could say, if you have debt, you could swap that out for, rather than taking a vacation, use that money to help pay that down. But it's not exactly this luxurious life, right? Like, you get a little vacation, but it's modest. You're not necessarily going off to Paris, but maybe you can take a week off and spend it with the kids at the beach. Like, but yeah, so ideally you will be using a living wage in your pricing calculations and not just your minimum wage, because one, you deserve a living wage. Gonna say that again. You deserve a living wage. You deserve more than that. Your art is beautiful. You're a wonderful human being, and I love you. But also, if you are hiring someone, it is much more attractive to work for you if you're paying a living wage and not just the lowest legal amount you can pay someone. All right. So now we're going to do some math. Everyone's favorite part of this panel. So rough overview. You're going to want to figure out every single item to make your product. That's literally everything you use. Even if you, so like for soap, I would use different oils and butters. I would use distilled water that I had to buy from the store because I don't own a still, because you can't just use tap water. And there was fragrances, but it also includes the packaging of it. For mine, I had little label bands around them. I used a wax seal to close it. All of that costs money. And if you have further packaging, if you make candles or anything that might need a tin, if you make, and this right now does not include shipping, but we'll get into that. Your shipping cost should cover your shipping equipment as well. If you need to ship it in a tube, a box, an envelope, your shipping cost should cover that. But in addition to every single ingredient, whether it's thread, your Photoshop subscription, I don't know what the better version of Photoshop is these days. What does Laura recommend? In addition to every ingredient, you need to include the time and labor it takes to make the product. This is yours, this is your employees. It takes time and labor to make it. You can't just say, oh, this item cost, or I made this item out of $3 of fabric. I should charge $3 for this product. No. Or I should charge $3.50 for this product. Also, no. Is your time worth 2 cents an hour? Like, it is not. Again, you're a valuable human. You are making quality products. But then you have to do some math. So you can't just sort of intuit it. You can get good at it once you've done this a few times, but you do need to do some math to make sure your numbers work. If you price something, does it actually cover your costs? Like, there's math and formulas to figure that out. And a good way to think of it, because again, we live in capitalism, because again, we're trying to, we are including profit in this formula. I do suggest Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, who, I don't know if he invented it or if he just really popularized it, but he's super good at it. He's got a book, but basically the simple upshot is the normal way that most people think about profit is you take your sales, you subtract your expenses, and what's left is your profit. And what that mostly leads to is that there's never anything extra. You take your sales and then you spend it all on more supplies, more equipment, more labor. So the better way to do that is to sort of flip that equation on its head. Sales minus your profit amount is what is left to use for expenses. And this will basically ensure that all your costs are, like, you do need to pay attention to how much things cost and what it restricts the amount that you have to spend on your expenses, ensuring that you have profit already set aside. And another thing that you have to actually take into consideration is taxes. I told you this is such an exciting panel. We're talking about math, we're talking about taxes. But look, taxes exist, and they would exist under other systems beyond capitalism. But here we are. So in Canada, we have what is called as a progressive tax system, meaning that your income is divided into brackets, and each bracket is taxed at a different rate. So this means that not all of your income is taxed at the same percentage. So only the income that falls within each bracket is taxed at that bracket's rate. So for example, I got these literally from Canada.ca. These are for 2025, if you make, say, $60,000, that's what you make in a year, your federal income taxes, you would be in this range, and it's 20.5%. But you don't pay 20.5% on the whole $60,000. That's not how it works here. Up until $57,000, so just $3,000 less, you're only paying 15%. So on that $3,000, you're only paying the 20.5% on the $3,000 that is over the first bracket. Similar with the Ontario income rates. Again, I chose Ontario. Where are you all from? I hope you're a lot from Ontario, because that's where I chose to get these numbers from. If you're in the $60,000 range, you're still in this second tax bracket. But for the first almost $53,000, you're only paying 5.5%. The remaining like $7,500 is taxed at 9.15%. So what does that mean? Basically, long story short is, when you are pricing your products, you do have to include the fact that you need to pay taxes into your pricing. Now, for the most part, a lot of small crafters kind of don't bother. They'll make a couple $100 a year at the craft fair, and they won't report it because it's a couple $100 and whatever, no harm, no foul. I'm not going to chase you down. But if you're trying to make a living, you will need to pay taxes. So what you want to do is make sure you're bringing in enough money to cover your taxes, and you're going to take that money, set it aside in a little bank account, and you are going to ignore the hell out of it until tax time, and then you'll just give it to the government. Then it doesn't come out of your profits, it doesn't come out of your pay, it doesn't come out of your operating expenses. You've set it aside, and you're ready, because you don't want to be surprised by a tax bill at the end of the year. I'm sorry this looks a little bit janky. I did not have time to make this all super pretty. I literally just took the working copy that I literally used and threw some color on it so you can hopefully follow along with what I'm saying. There's a bunch of stuff that I've hidden some other stuff. Here's a big block of whatever. Look, we're trying to work with what we have here. So we're going to go through pricing, and then we're going to go through another aspect of profit first, which is TAPs, which we'll get into, total allocation percentages. So what I did, first of all, was I listed basically every item, every ingredient that I might use. So this includes things like coconut oil, I used clay, I used some silk, I used beeswax, I used a bunch of different essential oils. It also included a label paper, because I used one of those for every product, almost every product, or wax pellets. I even included the water, and labor. Labor is on here because it's very important, and I just added it in because I would rather a spreadsheet do a bunch of math for me. So one of my products was a hand butter bar, solid lotion. And I guess here's a free recipe, do with that what you will. But I used coconut oil, beeswax, cocoa butter, and some peppermint essential oil was one of my most popular ones. And so I don't have full headings on this, but basically this is the amount in grams that I would use of each item. And then these numbers here are based on the price from over here. So the coconut oil is the number of grams times the dollar cost per gram. All right. So that's just spreadsheet math. So a full batch would cost me in just product, or like just supplies, $10.87. And I could get 12 bars per batch. Awesome. I also had to include the cost of the tin. That goes in a tin. It's going to cost something. Now, the labor cost I have down here, I did break it out. Again, this isn't a super wonderful spreadsheet. So I have the labor cost. I'm using, say, $20 an hour. This is a couple years old now. Where I used to live in Bruce County, you saw the living wage is now about $23. So this is under, but it was over at the time. I think at the time it was like $18. But it takes about 10 minutes to make up this batch. And for me, I only include the time I spend making it and mixing it. If I'm just waiting for stuff to melt in a pot, I can go do something else. I don't personally count that time. I don't stand there and watch this pot and earn my $3. No, my $3 is for actually making the product, because I can be labeling, I can be doing something else. I can be doing something else for my labor in that time. But so about 10 minutes for $20 an hour is about $3. So what that means is that my cost of goods, COG, per bar, ends up being, with the formula that I have here, $2.86. And you go, wow, that sounds really cheap. I could maybe sell that for $3. Sure, if you want to not make any money and be even more poor than you are now, which sucks, and still owe taxes. So my quick calculation, some of the common calculations you can do, you say, oh, this is your cost of goods, and you times it by 2, and that's your wholesale, and maybe times that by 2 again. Those are a little sloppy. You can use them if you're doing the other half of the equation on the other end, which we'll get to. So, but in the meantime, I used 2.1. So $2.86 times 2.1 is $6. Awesome. That actually turned into a nice, neat number. That would be my wholesale amount. For retail, usually if you're selling it to a store, they will expect a 50% discount on your retail price. That is called Keystone. It is pretty standard. You can switch it up a little bit. You can give them a little bit less of a discount as a small crafter. It is a lot harder as a pitch to them. It is so much easier to sell to a store if you can actually offer them 50% off. So I did sell in a few stores, so I had to give them 50% off. So I had to have my retail price be double my wholesale price. Now, as you can see from my calculation, $6 times 2.1 ended up being $12.59. Personally, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't find a lot of value in sticking to that exact number, but I just said my retail is $12. That makes it a nice round number. For some of my other products, it didn't work out quite so neatly, and you can kind of fudge the final numbers a little bit. But this is where we are. So wholesale is $6, retail is $12. And you can see if you adjust things like your labor cost, so you want to pay $25. Well, now all of a sudden, your labor is another whole dollar, but downstream, now your wholesale is $6.23, and your retail is now $13, which isn't a huge deal. You are now getting an extra $5 an hour, and your product is only $1 more. That's pretty good. Bring that back. But it also takes into account, you have to pay attention to what you are using. Say I wanted to use a fancier tin. Because I was buying such small amounts, I was paying way too much for tins, but here we are, $1.50. So say you want a really fancy one and it's $2.50 and you think, oh, that's not a lot of money. Now your retail price is suddenly $17. Is that viable? Can you convince someone to sell it? Is it worth that price? I know I said your items are absolutely worth money. You deserve a fair wage, but there's also sort of a balance between what you can charge and what you should charge, because as everyone else has been suffering wage stagnation through the past couple decades anyway. It is a lot easier to sell someone a luxury hand butter bar for $12 than it is to charge them $17. And it's also harder for the store to sell them. So just keep in mind when you're doing, when you want to be a little bit fancy or whatever, you just have to be able to justify it to both yourself, your math, and your customer. So, okay, that's sort of my basic price. Now we'll get into TAPS. What happens when you bring that money in? So TAPS is target allocation percentages, which just means what percent of every dollar that comes in are you going to split into your different profit first buckets? So basically the main ones, you can have different ones. This is what I had, and this is the main ones. You have a section for profit. Again, you take that off the top. You have to set some aside for taxes. For me, based on my tax bracket, I just took a flat 25% and I just set it aside, pretended I didn't have that money and it was waiting for tax time. Compensation is what pays you, the business owner, or like I said, you can get into sharing this with employees, you can get into co-ownership, but if you're just by yourself, this is what you make kind of for existing in your business. Operations, now that's where you get into things like your overhead. How much did it cost you to buy the bowls and the spoons and the mixer and the heater? Do you rent a studio space? Do you use up a spare room in your apartment that you could rent to someone else, but you're needing it for your craft business? Electricity costs, percentage of your internet bill. What are you using that's not directly just your ingredients, your operational costs? Now, if you have an employee, this is where their wages would come out of. And this is where your wages come out of too, technically. And then for material costs, I had 30%. So these all together add up to 100%. And it basically splits it into how much goes into each of those buckets when you sell one product. Now, the reason why you have to do the math coming and going is because, for example, we have operational costs, $4.20. $4.20. But what that includes is that has to, if you have an employee, you have to pay them. If you don't have an employee, you have to pay you. So you have to make sure that that number, the 420, is bigger than the labor cost over here, or at minimum, the same price, the same amount as. And I built a little bit of buffer into mine so that you could offer a sale. You could put stuff on sale. If you don't build that into your pricing, you can't have a sale because you can't afford that anymore. So in this case, it is. But it also is useful to have a TAPS formula. Say you went to a craft fair and you sold $800 worth of goods. That's fantastic. That's freaking amazing. So you bring it home, and what does it need to cover? You get $40 profit. Cool. That goes in one piggy bank. This also works better. Sorry, I forgot to explain. Pretend these are separate bank accounts. It's a little bit harder in Canada because we have fewer choices for free bank accounts. You don't want to be paying $15 a month for like 5 bank accounts. That's insane. Go with a free bank. Or use a budgeting and accounting software where you can virtually put these into different buckets. But cool, $40 in profit. $200, you're going to set that aside for taxes. And again, you are not going to look at it. You are not going to touch it because they will take it from you. So you need to have it set aside. Compensation, $40. Not bad, you know, because that also includes your hourly pay for sitting there all day. You would get some for that. And then your materials, you take $240 and you put that directly back into material costs. You can buy more butters, more oils, more fabric. You can make sure that your Photoshop subscription is paid for. Any sort of materials that you need. And again, operations is both the your capital goods, anything physical you need to make the products, but that isn't translated directly, or your electricity bill, your internet bill, a course you need to take to get better at your craft. Those are all included in operations and should be covered. So hopefully that makes sense. If you feel like you can't charge money for what you were doing, I don't care. Oh, cool, spelling mistake. Your profits are worth it. Your products are worth it. But seriously though, your products are worth it. You are worth it. It's not elitist to charge money for performing labor. Part of living under capitalism is they want to give you the least amount of money for your labor. They want to devalue your labor all of the time. And also, fuck that. That's not where we are. You should charge what you're worth. Because seriously, you are worth it. Your products are worth it. I am not kidding. We deserve a living wage for our craft. It's not just a hobby. And if it is, like, cool, you don't have to factor in profit and a percentage of your internet bill. But if you want to support yourself, perhaps support your family, you do need to charge what you're worth, and you are worth it. So this is literally, it's our blood, our sweat, our tears. You've all heard it. This is our labor. And the system often forces us to underprice our products and our goods, which undermines not just our art, but our dignity, our humanity, and it really just perpetuates the system of cheaper, 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 which is what capitalism wants. So one of the things about a craft business is that handmade is always supposed to be about authenticity and care. Like I said, I've said this before, but under capitalism, it's just reduced to a price tag and a profit margin. Those things you do have to take into consideration, but the point of it is you want to fund your art properly, like support yourself as a human being. You deserve value for your labor that is not just the minimum wage that someone is willing to pay you. So every piece of art represents hours of practice, and your creativity, your skills. So charging what you're worth is literally a way to honor your own effort and expertise, invest in yourself as an artist, and be able to sustainably share your products with the world, your craft. And it's a craft. It's handmade. It is unique. It is not something that comes off an assembly line. There is attention to detail. There is quality materials. There is a personal touch in every bar, in every seam, in every stroke of the brush. This has value intrinsically. This is something that is valuable. And it's really what sets apart handmade good from mass-produced goods. And literally, that is worth paying for. And you are worth it. You need to, when you charge a fair price, you aren't just trying to make a sale. You are helping create a sustainable business model. It lets you reinvest in your tools, in your materials, like I said, training. This growth benefits you and your community. If you make enough money, you can go spend that money at other businesses. If you don't make enough money, nobody gets enough money. You can't spend it on, do you want some other craft? Fantastic, go buy it. Do you just need groceries? Awesome. It's all good. But it benefits you and your community. Also, look at my amazing graph. Good, amazing, great. You are here. This is all of you are here. You are all at amazing. So one of the issues with pricing handmade products is, well, under capitalism, we have had wage stagnation for multiple decades at this point. When was the last golden age that people keep talking about? Usually it's really the 90s. And then everything has stayed pretty flat till then. I'm not going to get into super details. I'm not going to get into Reaganomics, but also Ronald Reagan ruined everything. Thank you. But undercharging your work to try and make it so that everyone can afford it not only contributes to a system where labor isn't valued, it also contributes to keeping wage stagnation as the norm. It is accepting it for yourself, even though nobody should have to suffer with it. So by pricing your work appropriately, you are in a sense taking a stand for fair wages, especially if you are having employees, giving them a fair wage, this is something you're doing. So not only for yourself and anyone you hire, so it also, this can drive broader change. It's not a form of direct action per se, but it is something you are doing directly to just sort of stick it to the system. Sorry. And you want a commitment to ethical practices, challenges these models like fast fashion. You make beautiful bespoke cosplay pieces. It's not something you can get at Shein or Temu or another place that drastically underpays and undervalues workers. You want to challenge that sort of thing, even though we live within this system. And it's also about signaling to your customers that your work is high quality. Your work has value. It is somewhat paradoxically, it is still a fact that the more something costs, the more people will believe it is worth. And this isn't, 100% true across the board, but in general, which is a fancier product, the $20 lotion or the $95 lotion? They might be exactly the same, but one feels premium. So pricing your products appropriately will also attract those who do appreciate genuine workmanship and fine handmade goods and are willing to invest in quality. And so if you are making this your career, if you are supporting yourself with this, when you charge what you're worth, you are setting the stage for future opportunities, whether it is expanding your product line, collaborating with other artists, or even getting into things like, profit sharing, co-ownership, that sort of thing. But at minimum, you have the ability to experiment, to try something new. You're not just barely scraping by. You can afford to get a new material. Maybe you can buy some fancier fabrics, some fancier butters or oils. You could have your prints printed on a higher quality paper because you've set aside money for those things, and that has value. Yeah, and I mean, this can have a ripple effect within the community. Ideally, we would have a community where fair compensation is the norm. But when one artist charges a fair price for their work, it does set an example for others. Once again, trust me, your products are good enough. You are good enough. This is not up for debate. All right. So this has mostly been my rant. But sort of in conclusion, to wrap this up, your products are worth it. You can subsidize your own products to be able to offer more accessible options, but it can't necessarily be every product. You should price appropriately, and it should be based on math. Set aside money for taxes, because that comes back to bite so many crafters in the butt, and it's not worth it. Yeah, yay math. And you and everyone involved deserves a living wage, like full stop, end of sentence. That is a minor act of rebellion against the capitalist system itself, which is something we should all be working towards. And yeah, I guess I can take a couple questions if you type them into the chat. But otherwise, we are about finished. Let's see, it looks like people are enjoying math. Excellent.
Can you make your spreadsheet shareable? Because that was really good. I was just thinking for some of the people who were looking at the numbers and how you had your spreadsheet set up was really awesome.
You know what? Yes, I can. If you give me a day, I can share that somehow. I would like to clean it up a little bit because it has a whole ton of extraneous stuff that's not necessary for a demo. But yeah, no, I would absolutely be fine sharing that. I wish someone had shared that with me, so I would love to share that with everyone who wants it.